There are moments. It helps us to remember that God is as close as our own breath, that we belong to one another, that all people and creation are one. Now is one of those times, I believe, as we live in a turbulent time which desperately needs people of faith to be the hope of the world, to bring love, peace, justice, and mercy into the world through the living of one's life. This week, I have been acutely aware of personal struggles in others' lives and aware of the collective worldly struggles. Especially in this time, worldwide disturbance, when not only one's personal life is unsettled, but the entire world is struggling, we find that there is great personal, political, and worldwide unrest. And people of the world, for once, are in this together. The pandemic is a great leveler of unknown proportion. It is a call to prayer. It is a time to have faith in the face of fear and to trust in the face of doubt. When the world escalates around us, seek stillness in God's presence. I've shared with you before about scuba diving, and once when we were caught in a storm on the Gulf of Mexico, many on board were filled with fear and anxiety, and yet I felt this strange sense of peace. And it came out of knowing that not far below the surface, if we put on our gear and we jumped in, we would find silence and calm in the deep water, and the storm would pass over. Prayer is our everyday place of stillness and silence, the place of entering into the depth of God's presence, where the storms pass over, or where we draw in the stillness and peace of God and are able to allow the storms to flow around us. We have talked before about this prayer that the Hebrew people believe is our first and last prayer. It is the unspoken name of God that rides on our very breath as it flows in, down the throat, enters and exits the body. And if you listen closely, on the inhalation you will hear Yah, and on the exhalation, way. So I invite you to join me for a moment just to explore this prayer in silence. You can do it with your mouth open or closed, and just listen for your breath flowing in and out through the back of the throat. Often, we begin spoken prayers with something like, "Dear God, be present with us." Yet God is always with us, as close as our own breath and our own heart. It's not God that is far away. It is our doubts, our vacillations, and fears that draw us away from God. And perhaps we might begin our prayer with, "Dear God, open my heart and soul to your presence in this moment." How often do we doubt God's presence? Our faith wavers or fails. Like Peter, when our eyes are diverted from Jesus and we catch a glimpse of the raging waters and the chaos of life overwhelms us, we find ourselves tossed about on a stormy sea. The disciples were tired even before they encountered the crowd of 5,000, and Jesus said to them, "You feed them," which was our story last week. And then he sends them on ahead in the boat while he goes up the mountain to pray. And so now they're in the boat on the sea, and a storm has kicked up, and it is challenging. It takes all of their strength, especially as the wind and waves work against the boat. Tossed to and fro, the disciples cannot see the stars to get a bearing on their direction. The driving rain is overwhelming, and it's easy to feel lost and to be blown off course. And it sounds a bit like life in the throes of the chaos of every day, where schedules, family, events, and appointments occupy our attention in the ever-changing world of coronavirus. Our lives are lived in a continual state of change, especially now. In our story, the disciples are beyond exhaustion. They have lost their bearing. Their boat is being beaten by the wave. Then as Jesus approaches them, walking on the water, terror and fear arise in their hearts. And they wonder, is it a ghost? To calm their fear, Jesus says, "Take heart. It is I. Do not be afraid." Take heart. Get a hold of yourselves. Return to the deeper place within. Take a breath. Refresh your connection with God and sink into the deeper place of inner stillness. It is I. Hear my voice. Feel my presence. I am with you. Do not be afraid. There is nothing to fear. When we fear, our minds have a hold over our entire being. An open heart, as we see in children, does not fear. It is a source of courage. The heart remembers it is part of God. In the story, then Peter does what we often do, puts Jesus to the test. Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. Come, a gentle bidding, an invitation to walk as Jesus walks. And Peter does until his attention is diverted by the fierceness of his environment. His confidence fails. He loses heart, and fear rises at the sign of the waves, and he begins to sink. And Peter cries out, "Lord, save me." And in that instant, Jesus doesn't judge him, doesn't leave him to his own devices. Jesus reaches out and grabs him, because Jesus loves Peter in all his doubt and faith and love and fear, just as he loves each of us and all God's children in creation. Even when it seems that all is lost, when the world is so challenging, the chaos too much, and the waves are rising, go within, go deep, pray, take heart, have courage, do not fear. Jesus says, "It is I."